Welcome to part 2 of the chord inversions. If you haven't seen part 1, please check it out in the link. It's really important to see all the initial parts we established first to get this going. So let's dig right back into where we were. We had established 3 shapes of a chord, an E form, a C form, and an A form. And initially we did them with the G chord. Let's do those again. So we have the G chord here with the E form on the 3rd fret. The same G chord on the 7th through 10th frets, starting with the 10th fret here on the A string. That was the C form. And then on the same 10th fret, G note with our A form for our G chord. So now when we take away, we're going to use 3 string groups. We're going to 3 strings. We're going to use the D, the G, and the B strings. And we're going to take those from each of the chord shapes we just found. So in the E form down here, we have this little staircase. This is 5, 4, 3 from our E form bar chord. You probably recognize that as your initial little F chord or F major 7 shape. I call this the staircase. From our C form bar chord, we have the trickiest but the most rewarding one. I call it the convoluted shape. It looks like a broken staircase to me. In this case, we're on 9, 7, and 8. And we're visualizing this from the 10th fret pinky note here. And then the easy one is from the A form, we have all flat 3 across the 12th fret. So again, these are all inversions of a G chord. Down here, this G, we have the staircase. The C form yields us the convoluted shape. And then also this flat one up here is from the A form. And just like before, you want to first just be able to go up and down strumming the chord shapes like this. The cool thing is, once you know those are all G chords and they'll be there forever, forever. In every song that ever uses a G chord, those shapes will be available to you once you know them. It's so awesome. As I mentioned earlier in the other video, you also want to treat these like lead scale ideas. So each one you want to separate. And just get used to playing them and figure out what fingers you want to use. I like to use 3 different fingers for the flat one. You could roll across it, the convoluted shape. This one's very awkward to play at first. But then of course you realize, hey, this is the first 3 notes of Purple Haze. It's like, wow, what a trippy way to start your career with that. Didn't start it, but you know. And then the G chord down here, we have the staircase. So I would usually play them in order, D, G, B strings. And you can go beyond the octave here. Awesome. These are really the inversions that are on the D, G, and B strings. These are really awesome in the rhythm guitar department. These are all over the place. To me, these were all the missing pieces I was looking for. Whether it was Van Halen, Keith Richards and the Stones, all the classic rock stuff, even to Randy Rhoads. I mean, all these guitar players were using these to fill in spaces. So one of the things you'll see is when people use inversions is they add them into their chord progressions. And it's really nice, so as a rhythm guitar player, we're talking now for a second. But again, this stuff will translate to lead guitar. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's say I had a song that was just G, C, and D. Right? Now I could use the staircase shape, navigate it up to C up here, and to D. But when you start mixing up the 3 shapes, you get better voice leading. What that means is the notes of the chord are going the least amount necessary to the next available chord. Any notes that are the same stay in the same place. They don't change octaves or anything. So for our G chord, if we went to a C chord, we would see that there's an A form right under our hand right here, and we could turn the staircase, pivot on the same note, and get the flat shape for the C chord. You can also now, for the D chord, you would use the little convoluted shape, because here's your D note right here on the 5th fret. And the G chord and the D chord share the note on the B string. So these little voicing motions, they're super important. You would realize that you would use these for, if you're making keyboard parts or string arrangements for music, they would follow these ideas. Background vocals follow this motion. You know, not everyone's sliding up and down frets like we do a single bar chord. So you can use this idea even as a lead player. So if I'm looking at this as a lead player, I see the staircase from G. And if I'm thinking G major pentatonic, or even the modes, the 7-note scale, I'm in the 2nd position, 2nd pattern. That's just the pentatonic version. So you can highlight them. I can see when the G chord goes to the C, the first note is common to both of them. The middle finger from the G chord is only going to go up 1 fret to the note for the C chord, and the note on the B string is going to go up a whole step for the note in the C chord. So I can highlight those when I play. Even without the chords, I can start to bring out the sound of the changes. Right, you heard me go G to C, D to G. So amazing. I was so lucky when I went to school. Pat Metheny would come to school a lot and talk to us about these things. And I remember sitting in the performance center, and he came in and was talking about that if the whole band stopped playing during your solo, the audience should still hear the sound of your chords in your solo. Once I picked myself up off the floor and said, how in the world do people do that? I thought he meant like chord, solo, chord, solo. But he was saying no, he was saying the notes you play should sound like the chord, reflect the chord, be the chord. It's like Bruce Lee, right? Be the chord. And so hitting the root and the 3rd and the 5th when the chords are changing, knowing when they're happening, being that aware, that acute of what's going on, even in a simple G-C-D song. That's what makes it sound so good. And these inversions help unlock all of that stuff. We had mentioned in the last one that these, the chord inversions help break momentum of chord progressions. In the last example, we had A to G. And I could use one shape, the same shape. But that still does the same thing, where everyone's going down A to G. But I can go up to the G if I go to the next inversion above it. So from the A staircase, I would go to the convoluted G shape. And again, I'm looking at the A form bar chord going to the C form for the G chord. I can extend chord progressions, right? We talked about doing it. That was doing each pair. Now each one of them moved up, right? So you can do this in different ways. You can be so creative with this kind of stuff. These are all sitting on top of your scales. Especially if the stuff is diatonic, meaning A and G are in the key of D. So all of these notes are all in the key of D if you look at them like that. It's really amazing. I really feel like it reinvented rhythm guitar for me when I learned these shapes. These were all the missing components I found all the time. One of the things with these shapes that I see a lot as a rhythm guitar player is the Keith Richards thing. He loves to, let's say I was doing C to F, whatever, I'm just picking an example here. So I have my C bar chord, and that leaves this flat shape. And I know some people say, well, wait a minute, I know Keith Richards was in alternate tuning and didn't play with this thick string. And I was like, what? Wow, he must have been really crazy to think about that stuff. But the one thing that when he plays an open G tuning, the one thing that doesn't change are the 3 strings we're on, the D, G, and B, because they're already in the G chord. So he actually uses the standard tuning strings all the time in his motions. The A and the E string kind of reinforce the sound a little bit. So what Keith might do if he's looking at a C chord is he'll bar with the first finger across the 3 5th fret notes on the D, G, and B strings. And while he keeps that down, he hammers or adds the 2 other fingers that create the C form, the convoluted shape. And this is an F. If I put my pinky down, I can see that's an F note. This is now an F chord. And I realized that move there was in so many songs. I first saw that in Jessica. It was in, right? And all the, like so many Stone songs do that. Right? It was in that song. It was in Randy Rhoads and Crazy Train. It was all these little moves I kept seeing, especially that little hammer on, that little shape there. Fantastic stuff. And again, these are all equally at home in rhythm and lead. And that's what I loved when they merged, right? It wasn't just a chord and it wasn't just a scale, but they were starting to overlap. So these things really open up so many boundaries. And just like before, you have to find the minor versions of them. So let's quickly do that. So before we had the G major as a staircase. Its third here is under the middle finger. So we're going to flatten that and go 5, 3, 3. Up in the C form bar chord. The third is under your third finger. So we're going to lower that one note, flip the fingers, and make a little triangle shape. This one's very easy to grab, and it's a nice middle sounding minor shape. And then finally the flat one up top here, just like an A form bar chord, of course, would turn into the minor form. And you would see that up there. These are really good. People, again, David Gilmour outlines these in his solos all the time, so does Eddie Van Halen. On Running with the Devil, the song goes, and during his solo, goes from an A to a G chord a couple of times. And you could clearly see him outlining. Then he does the same thing over the G chord. Right? It's very cool. He uses that shape so much. And again, David Gilmour does this on Comfortably Numb and the Time solo. So many places you'll see these things. Take your time, one chord at a time. I would say, think back when you were a very beginning guitar player, first learning your open chords. The top 5 chords on the guitar of all time: G, C, D, E minor, A minor. So much happens with those chords. It's the first chords we learn to start switching and playing songs with. Those are the chords you take with you with a capo to play in other keys. And now we can use them to start building your chord inversions from. They're a great place to start. There's a ton to do. If you think about the first video and this video, any one chord now has 6 different shapes. That's pretty wild, right? So for a G chord, on the D, G, and B strings, we have the staircase, the convoluted, and the flat. When we go to the G, B, and E strings, now we're on the top 3 strings. We have this little 4, 3, 3 shape, this little D-looking shape, and 12, 12, and 10. And again, we cover those in part 1 of the chord inversion videos. So once you see those, now I should point out that some of this stuff does overlap. It's like the guitar tuning thing by the 5th fret. So the shape here, on the top 3 strings, is actually the same as the convoluted shape here. So there is some overlap with the stuff, and you have to keep track of it just by listening to see where it is in terms of the hierarchy. Again, some people's instincts are also, well, if I'm going to play those, why don't I play this one? And if I'm going to do that, why don't I add the pinky? And if I do that, why don't I add the bar? And before you know it, you've filled out the whole chord again. And those don't move. When you play all the notes of all the chords all the time, your sound is like this. When you reduce it, you can make chords go up and down independently of the music, which is really so freeing to do. All right, friends. Thank you so much for listening. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We'll be coming back here with a lot of great stuff on here on Lead Guitar Workshop. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys in the future. Rock on.